To discuss the present, past, and future role of civil society in Turkey-Armenia relations, we have with us today Mr. Kevork Gabrielian from EPF Armenia, Ms. Asena Günal from Anadolu Kültür, and Mr. Levent Korkut from the Civil Society Development Center here in Turkey. Moderating our talk from London School of Economics and Political Science is Ms. Armine İşhanyan, Associate Professor in the Department of Social Policy and the Executive Director of the Atlantic Fellows for Social and Economic Equity Program at the International Inequalities Institute. She has conducted extensive research and published widely on civil society and social movements in Armenia. Ms. İşhanyan's recent studies focus on ways in which local and international civil society actors have been involved in peace building and conflict transformation processes. Ms. İşhanyan, I now leave the floor to you for what I am certain will be a very productive and informative talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Tallinn, for the introduction, and thank you to the Hrant Dink Foundation for organizing this evening's webinar on such an important and timely topic. So just to give a sense of the running order, I will introduce all of the speakers, and then I will pose some questions to each of the speakers. We'll have a panel discussion, after which I will open the floor to the audience to pose their questions to the speakers, and then end with about 5 minutes of reflections from our speakers, final reflections. So let me please go ahead and introduce our speakers. Kevork Gabrielian is currently the Executive Director of the Eurasia Partnership Foundation in Armenia. He is an international development leader and writer with 35 years of experience working in public and private spheres in transitional countries across the Balkans and Central Asia, with a primary focus in Armenia. Throughout his career, Kevork has specialized in civil society, youth, media, regional studies, the European dimension, and peace building. Dr. Gabrielian has also worked as a Eurasia Program Manager and Senior Policy Advisor at International Alert, an international NGO working on conflict transformation and peace building. He writes prolifically, contributing fiction and essays, as well as journalism pieces in Armenian, Russian, and English to a variety of media outlets on topics ranging from international relations to conflict transformation, peace building, to European integration and Armenia's development issues. He is a developer and editor of several handbooks and manuals, including on topics such as anti-corruption, project management, and conflict-sensitive reporting. Very welcome, Kevork. Asena Günal obtained her BS in International Relations and her MA in Sociology from the Middle East Technical University. She received her PhD from Boğaziçi University in 2008 with a dissertation focusing on state-citizen relations through healthcare policies in the Republican Turkey. She worked as an editor at İletişim Publishing House from 1998 to 2005. Since 2008, she has been working as the program director of DEPO, a center for arts and culture in the Tophane neighborhood of Istanbul. Dr. Günal is a co-founder of Siyabant, a research platform that documents censorship cases in the arts in Turkey, and she was a fellow of the AHDA program at Columbia University in 2014. She has been working as executive director of Anadolu Kültür since 2018. She authored A City That Remembers, Space and Memory from Taksim to Sultanahmet, and co-edited Feminism in Turkey in the 1990s. She is German-French. She is the 2019 German-French Prize winner for Human Rights and the Rule of Law laureate. And our third and final speaker, our panelist, is Levent Korkut, who graduated from Ankara University Law School in 1986. Dr. Korkut completed his MA and PhD degrees at the same university. He continued his academic studies at University of Chicago as a visiting student researcher between 1990 and 1992. Then from 1990 to 2011, he worked at Hacettepe University Department of Political Science as an assistant professor. Since 2011, he has been an academic at Istanbul Medipol University Law School. He is an expert in the fields of constitutional law, human rights, peace processes, and civil society development. He is one of the founders of Amnesty International Turkey branch. Between 2007 and 2009, he was elected as an international board member in Amnesty International. In 2012, Levent Korkut was selected to be a board member of the Board of Human Rights Institute, a national human rights council established in 2012. He has written several articles, books, and reports on constitutional law and human rights. Currently, he is the president of the executive board of the Civil Society Development Center, which is a leading civil society capacity building NGO that cooperates with the EU and the European Union Ministry and Peace Foundation. So welcome to our panelists again and to all of you in the audience. So I'll begin my first question, and I'll ask on each question, I'll change the order I go to with the speakers. So Asena, I will begin with you, and Kevork second, and Levent third on this first question. What would you say was the role of civil society in the normalization of relations between Armenia and Turkey before the recent war? And what would you say was that process had achieved prior to September 2020?
In terms of politics, there wasn't that much going on. I mean, there was this, the protocols and the football diplomacy, but after that, it was actually the civil society institutions which brought these two countries together. Of course, I should mention the role of our founder and director, Osman Kavala, who has been imprisoned illegally and unjustly since October 2017. He actually he founded Anadolu Kültür in 2002 with the aim to bring different cultures together, to establish local, regional, and international collaborations, and to use culture and arts to bring people together to create a ground for dialogue. And he already had this in mind that, especially in conflict situations, culture and arts would work to come together. So in early 2000s, he went to Armenia. The border was closed like today, and there wasn't that much relation between two countries, although we are neighbors and we are close and we have, many common things. But he went to Armenia and started to meet people there. And I guess he was maybe the first Turkish going to Armenia, not as an Armenian from Turkey, but as a Turk from Turkey. He went there and started to meet people there. And then as part of Anadolu Kültür, he founded Kars Art Center, which brought actually people from not only Armenia, but also Georgia and Azerbaijan and Turkey together. So these are the attempts to bring different people together when state is always in tension. And in terms of achievements, of course, there are many achievements. There was nothing before. So compared to nothing, even what we achieved is little, it is like 10 times or 100 times because there was nothing. And as I said, these two topics are very much connected. Bringing Turkey and Armenia together is also connected to, talking about the genocide, talking about the Armenian legacy in the Ottoman Empire, and so and Armenian legacy today. And when you look at the projects, of course, there are many achievements. I can refer to our projects like Speaking to One Another, where young people from Armenia and Turkey come together to develop oral history projects and listen to the stories from grandfathers, grandmothers. So they started to question their prejudices, and there are even those examples that Armenian young people decided to stay in Turkey longer and have more connections in Turkey. But there are, of course, other cases young people are, maybe even more prejudices. Of course, we cannot say that it is all success and there are very big developments and so, but compared to the older days when there was nothing, of course, there was a lot to do and lots to actually get to know. I mean, the first, for example, activity of Anadolu Kültür as part of a collaboration project, which brought Armenian and Turkish photographers together, Merhaba Rev, which is a combination of Merhaba, hello, and what was this Armenian? I forgot. Barev? Barev. So it started with Merhaba Rev in 2006. Then it continued with Armenia-Turkey normalization program, which is also hosting this Armenia-Turkey cinema platform. So filmmakers from both countries came together. Or this, we had a lot of work on like any cultural heritage site where Armenian experts and Turkish experts come together. Or we had these Turkey-Armenia Youth Symphony Orchestra. So all these are contributing to the dialogue of two societies. But as I said, of course, this is achievement, but these are not without its problems. This had its own problems, and it wasn't easy to create a ground for dialogue. Actually, there were tensions. And when, for example, Armenians and Turks were meeting, the Armenians were upset about the Turks being not interested in genocide. This was not their prior agenda. And as a final note, of course, these should be taught within the context of the relations with the diaspora too. Diaspora was a very important component of the civil society activities. And as Anadolu Kültür, we tried to include diaspora people to all these projects. And it also contributed to the reconciliation of two countries.
Thank you, Asena. Gevorg, to you, the same question about the role of civil society in the normalization of relations and what you think those efforts had achieved prior to September 2020.
Well, hi, and thank you for this wonderful event and seeing so many old friends. Indeed, I agree with what Asena said. And indeed, my personal meeting with Osman Kavala, which happened sometime at, I think, 2008 or 2009, created a huge opportunities for me, my organization, our partners, to work with Osman and Anadolu Kültür on a variety of things, and only in the cultural field, only in the field of cinematography, for instance, a huge amount of work has been done. When you invited me to this talk, I thought instead of me, there could be 15 people in the positions of leadership who have done huge amounts of work over these years on Armenia-Turkey dialogue. But in fact, if we look at all of the areas that people have worked and that civil society has interacted, according to our calculations, it is the groups of beneficiaries reach up to several thousands of people. Of course, this is again perhaps not enough. But before going into why is it not enough, I want to tackle one of the issues that is quite often raised. And for instance, right now there is one project in Armenia. It is not about Armenia-Turkey relations, but it is in general entitled, "Why did civil society fail?" And it means, of course, the war, the crisis of the current government, etc. But there is always this assumption of exaggerated expectations from what civil societies can achieve. This may be an honest expectation, exaggerated expectation, or it may be a way of diminishing the role and the capacities of civil society. So first of all, this is a very troubled term, civil society. What does it mean? And for me, this is not a structure. This is not a thing. This is not an object. This is a function. This is a situation, a value system among many different people when they act not in order to have a profit and not in order to have a political career within the governmental structures. Of course, sometimes people who are civil society may also become members of government or may start engaging in politics or have a business and engage in profit making. But usually this is what distinguishes for me the civil society activities from any other activities. It is a function of doing something for the good of the society without an intention of having a profit or having a political career in the state structures, or not even in the state structures, just in a party or something. So in this respect, it is a much larger group than just NGOs as it is usually looked at. It is huge amount of interactions that took place between business people and their promoters of business, in order to establish a situation where, despite the blockade that existed for Armenia, there is a flow of trade and goods between Turkey and Armenia. Huge amount of people who are just a variety of ethnic groups, in fact, who have their own understanding and interest in positioning about the Armenia-Turkey state relations. A huge amount of professionals who may be even working in a state structures or in other structures, but they agree to meet and cooperate and to see if they can receive something from each other. Asena is absolutely correct that there was an overwhelming assumption in the public opinion of Armenia that the genocide issue, I mean, every person from Turkey with whom one comes to meet, they should kind of discuss the issue of genocide and accept that genocide took place. But that was one of the points that we noticed within our work, that every visitor from Turkey, or maybe 99% of them, independently if they so to speak, recognized the genocide or not, but they visited the Genocide Museum. They wanted to do it themselves. That's point number one. And point number two, that we have worked a lot for Armenia and Armenian and Turkish, or Armenian and Turkey-based people, partners, to benefit from ties, from connections, from contacts, also in other areas, in professional areas, in IT, in medical information exchange, or medical skills and medical, opportunities in many such areas, in tourism, in et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this, of course, all of this wouldn't be possible if it were not for the support that was coming to Armenia and Turkey, primarily either from the United States or from the European Union or from Western-based donors, first of all. And I should say that this is a very interesting element in all that situation, because with that support, or with their own capacities, because there have been many activities beyond and outside that support as well, there has been a genuine interest, of course, determined by common history and by the issues that this history has between, particularly in Armenia, to know about Turkey. And there was also, of course, the reason, the business reasons and the reasons of tourism, etc. But if you compare, for instance, the relations between two neighborly countries who have no issues between each other, or no significant issues, but they are consider themselves brotherly and sisterly nations, like Armenia and Georgia, Armenians and Georgians, one can notice that there are much fewer specialists, for instance, of Georgian language in Armenia than specialists of Turkish language. This support that has come from the Western international community has contributed to the also to this kind of, accumulating knowledge about each other as different, unfortunately not helping overcoming the the issue, or addressing the issue of state relations. But again, it is not civil society's function. It is impossible to imagine that state relations can drastically move in this or that direction, in any of the directions, because of civil society activism in the countries which are either not democratic or are having huge gaps in their democratic functioning. This is the situation. And it is just amazing to see how much criticism is coming from all of the possible corners, even before the 2020 war, to these activities, and how much attention is given to these activities in a negative sense, either by those in the states who want to curtail these activities, or by a variety of groups who do not understand the essence of what is this about, because there is this general assumption among many Armenians that any interaction between Armenia-based person and a Turkey-based person is actually a betrayal of the Armenian cause. This is a very, misconstrued concept, and this is also what we have to take into account, even if the recent upheavals wouldn't take place. This was accompanying our work all the time. Thank you, Armenia.
Thanks, Gevorg. I have some comments, but I want Levent to share his thoughts first. And just to remind all of the speakers and listeners that we have interpretation. So please make sure you have chosen the channel, the language channel. It's Chinese for Turkish and English for the rest.
I hope you can hear me well.
Geliyor Levent Bey sesiniz. Buyurun.
Yes, we can hear you. At the outset,
Levent Bey gelmiyor
I should.
sesiniz. Pardon.
At the outset, can you hear the interpreter? Can you hear me?
Çok kısık geliyor. Mikrofonunuz mu acaba bir şey mi değiyor?
Yes, I can hear the interpreter.
Şimdi geldi. Şimdi geliyor.
I will try to switch my position. At the outset, I would like to touch upon the following point. The contributions of civil society in Turkey-Armenian relations can only emerge in the long term, and it has to be the product of patient efforts and a long struggle. When we look at wars around the world, we see, or conflicts around the world, we see that they take place in a long period of time. This has many reasons, but particularly Betül Çeliker's work on conflicts gives us a concept, and which is that for deep-rooted problems between two groups in one society or between two states, a different psychology emerges ontologically in civil society as well. This could be called ontological anxiety or angst. And briefly, it is about anxiety among individuals regarding a situation which turns into social anxiety. I do not know the Armenian society that well, but this state of anxiety is widespread in our society. And this is one of the reasons why it is hard to overcome this problem through huge steps in the short term. In fact, we associate civil society with association, but more broadly, it encompasses all individuals living in a state structure. From this perspective, there is a difference between civil society organizations and civil society. Widespread beliefs, thoughts, convictions in civil society affect the structure of societies. And in state civil society relations, when states exaggerate these thoughts, convictions, or reflections and produce general policies, general policy direction, we see this around the world. In fact, states paint pictures that affect people's lives through this effort. In fact, these pictures form individuals' universe of meanings. And there are negative elements and positive elements within this universe. And the number of negative and positive elements tell you about the difficulty of your task. Of course, it will be disappointing to try to solve a difficult issue in the short term. Perhaps this is the most negative part of this issue. We see this in not only the Armenian issue, but also in the Kurdish issue. The positive processes that happened over time ended very soon, and the resulting disappointment caused more negative situations. But I believe we should develop an approach that will take place in the long run, taking all this into account. How can we form or develop such an approach? If we act on the basis of the concept of peace, it should be a qualified peace, not only ceasefire. It involves intercultural dialogue and communication. Just to give an example, just like in Western Europe, the process between France and Germany in the aftermath of the Second World War, the foundation, establishment of the European Union was a cultural result of a cultural approach, formation or development of an environment of peace and dialogue. It wasn't only ceasefire. Long-term efforts will be needed for such a peace process. And who are the actors of peace in this long-term process? And what are the elements of peace? How can we contribute to peace? I think we should reflect on this. For qualified peace or quality peace, we need an intercultural rapprochement and dialogue, but states are indispensable in this process, but they are not the only actors. They are necessary, but not sufficient. Civil society organizations, international organizations, and many other actors have to step in, should step in such difficult issues. A widespread concept, second track, the concept of second track. Has an important role, is pointed out as an important element in such processes, but we should also express that the second track activities by civil society, the first track is implemented by diplomacy. These activities do not form a separate channel. In fact, they act hand in hand with actors involved in the first track. But there is a problem in this area as well. In all the work I've been involved so far, public support that we needed was not extended sufficiently. In fact, this diminishes or weakens the efforts of civil society actors. But if we're talking about long-term efforts, there's always things that we can do along the way. We need to be able to see the more positive aspects. This is a difficult goal, but we will try to adopt a realistic approach which will prevent failure and disappointment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've got some other questions and I want to make sure we have discussion for time for all of them.
Just a final point, if I may. The work that we have carried out so far produced some results. For instance, we knew that the citizens of Armenia living in Istanbul were having difficulties. We knew about the difficult status they had and that they had to work in Turkey. We conducted an activity that would support them, and actors from Turkey, or certain actors from Turkey supported that. This was not a big thing, but they volunteered to support them institutionally, to support this work institutionally, bringing such actors together, actors that are ready to support, bringing the elements of peace together is perhaps the most important point. Today, it may not be big, but further developing it, strengthening is something that we can do. We can achieve that and work towards that and make sure that such initiatives become stronger step by step. This is perhaps the biggest investment in the future. We should make that investment. Maybe we will not get results overnight in 1 week, but we will understand the benefit that we will get from such efforts. This anxiety, ontological anxiety, shows itself, manifests itself through methods such as exclusion, discrimination. Resolving those is part of achieving results. I think such efforts are extremely important and should be taken seriously. Rapprochement, dialogue opens many gates, and will continue to do so. The biggest role of society has to do with bringing elements of peace and resolution that will eliminate this ontological anxiety.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You all have raised very interesting points about the role of civil society and its achievements. We are also in a context where, as Gevorg mentioned, there is a lot of criticism coming from many angles, many places saying, well, what has civil society achieved? And I have, one question, which is about where are we today and what lessons can we learn in terms of, the post-war context, thinking about where are Armenia-Turkey civil society relations in this context. And also, Levent, you talked about peace. And I invite everyone to think about what is peace? What do we mean by peace in this context? Because is peace simply the absence of conflict, of military conflict, or do we have a more positive understanding of peace? And some would argue that peace, you cannot talk about peace without justice, some would say. So can we, think about where are we now? you know, there is this period of a lot of questions being asked. There's a lot of criticism. Where are we? Are we going to move in a new direction, or is it same business as usual? So this time I will start with Gevorg, and then Levent, and then Asena to you.
Thank you, Armine, for your notes, and also thanks to Mr. Korkut for his comments. I'm not very well, I haven't prepared, right, for replying to these very difficult questions. I'll just share what comes to my mind. First of all, let's look at it. Just as a precondition, I think we need a well-functioning societies. Now, the word democracy may not sound very fashionable, but we need, when I say democracy, I do not mean either democracy as a facade democracy or as a legalistic democracy, but I mean the participation of the population in governance issues based on their own consent. To what extent do they want to participate? Something like this. And both our countries, but not only our countries, also the surrounding countries, the entire region, take it as a smaller version of it, like South Caucasus and Turkey, or larger version, including the post-Soviet space, Russia, including Iran, Middle East. All of them suffer from the huge gaps in this kind of a structure, a state governance structure. And I think this is the one issue that we are all dealing with. Now, this is related to, it's a difficult relation, but it is related to the issue of the war and post-war situation, because our contacts and dialogues between Armenia and Turkey-based partners were interrupted by the war, which was quite, on one hand, it was expected by the experts. Everybody would say that at some point in time it would happen. On the other hand, of course, it was totally unexpected. When would it happen? In which conditions? And I think the issue of Corona should be brought here as well, the coronavirus, because all of the crises that are currently being experienced by all of us are related also to the coronavirus situation that came to visit the world a year ago, or more than a year ago now. So there were several reasons which were making the situation much more dire than otherwise it might have been. So there is a war. In Armenia, there is an assumption among many people, many Armenians, and not only the Armenia-based Armenians, but also the diaspora, that Turks and Azerbaijanis are the same ethnic group, the same people. So Azerbaijanis are referred to as Turks. There is a declaration by the leaders of these two states that it's one nation, two states. Turkey is supporting Azerbaijan in this war. It is Erdogan, Mr. Erdogan, that is deciding to support with a variety of ways. So what happens to our contacts? Obviously, they are frozen. Obviously, there is also a military rule which actually officially prohibits even internet contacts of Armenia-based people with Azerbaijan-based people, and by extension also with Turkey-based people. But in fact, contacts, email, internet contacts with Turkey-based people didn't stop. And they didn't stop both as a fact, de facto, but also they didn't stop because the bonds that have been established beforehand. Because as different from many people, Azerbaijanis or people in Azerbaijan, with whom they have been also a lot of dialogues and contacts, people who were based in Turkey and who had prior contacts with Armenia-based people expressed their personal condolences, their personal disagreement with the way things go, with the war as a means of resolving the Karabakh issue or any issue whatsoever, with the, with the cruel way of the war that was taking place. And these personal messages that I received, many of my friends and colleagues, people who I know received, I received from people, quite unexpected people, people with whom we have been in touch only once on a particular occasion. This was something very significant. And this demonstrated that Turkey is quite in an unexpected way, one could say, quite a well-developed society, well-developed civil society. There are some people, and probably many more than we got to know about, with conscience, not consciousness, but the other word, conscience, vicdan, I think in Turkish it is, with, capacity to relate, to empathize, and to understand. However, maybe also, indeed, it's a fact that the Armenian side has been wrong also in its actions, the official Armenian side in its actions, bringing about the resulting war. But this commiseration, these condolences that came from Turkey-based people, where I think both the vouching that what we did in the previous years wasn't for nothing, as well as paving the way for the next stage interactions and for the future. And the last thing that I want to add in this context is that we have been fortunate enough to, to be able to move from the in-person interaction to this internet-based interaction, which means changing the types of projects that are being implemented. And however, in both situations, there has been also an issue. For instance, one of the blames or accusations that have come in our direction has been that there are many more people, both from Turkey and Armenia, who want to engage in dialogue and in joint projects, in joint undertakings, than what, for instance, we as Eurasia Partnership Foundation or the EU-funded large-scale project can support. So one of the criticisms that have come to our attention, both before the war and after the war, has been that we are monopolizing the field. Of course, that's not true. The point is there is much more to do than there are resources currently available, which is also a very interesting indication of the situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gevorg. Thank you for your thoughtful reflections. Levent, I turn to you.
Yes. In order not to take up much of your time, I didn't dwell upon this subject in my first speech. I just touched upon it. But here is something that we need to understand at this point. When we say peace, I don't only understand from it ceasefire. This is not what I understand from this term. If we think that peace equals ceasefire or non-conflict, it means that civil society cannot play much of a role in this subject. Actually, the role of civil society should be more qualified. I mean, dialogue and intercultural communication should be established. Ceasefire is something that concerns states. Maybe civil society can make some contributions there too, but what's more important is to create an intercultural understanding and dialogue. And this is the main role of civil society. And of course, states can play a supportive role here. Their support is important, but non-governmental actors are more important in doing this. So their contributions are very important. So I think peace means more than just ceasefire. There is a differentiation sometimes made between negative peace and positive peace. Negative peace can mean non-existence of violence or conflict, but positive peace encompasses other elements. For example, justice. Establishing justice is an important element. Dialogue and culture between societies and establishing that is an important element. Respecting rights and freedoms is an important element. Believing in the rule of law is an important element. Having a participatory understanding is an important element and factor. Having a culture of diversity and internalizing it as an understanding is also important. There could be conflicts, or disputes, but it should be constructive. Ideas can be in a conflict, opposing ideas can be in a conflict, and conducive environments for that should be provided. If all of these are established, then peace go beyond just ceasefire, and it can bring cultures closer together. This is how we can have this environment. In this case, we can go beyond peace and we can establish and strengthen dialogue between cultures. Of course, all of these should be mature enough to make more progress. At this moment, when we take a look at the current situation, we know how the relations are between the two societies since the 19th century. We know how states act. And on top of that, there is the post-Soviet developments in the region, the problems between Azerbaijan and Armenia, things get even more difficult. This is what we observe. In our work, in our meetings, practical work, what I feel, what I hear, especially when I talk to Armenian academics, diplomats, is that Azerbaijan is important in relations with Armenia, and this constitutes an important problem. Of course, overcoming all these obstacles is quite difficult, but civil society needs to do its best to overcome these obstacles. If we believe in intercultural dialogue, pluralism, rights and freedoms, then this is a duty that we must assume. Working for this objective and constructing this step by step is a duty for us.
Thank you for addressing both parts of that question. I know it was a big question. Now I turn to you, Asena. Can you please take the virtual floor as it?
Yeah. I mean, it's ashes, but it is something that is also active. I mean, it requires collaboration and exchange, and it is something which is living. I mean, it's not only the lack of war, But when we look at the recent situation, I mean, I would like to give a concrete example regarding the war and the effect of it on civil society activities. We started a project with the support of Gulbenkian Foundation to bring young artists from Turkey, Armenia, and diaspora. We made an open call. There were going to be workshops, and in the end, there was going to be an exhibition. And while we were receiving the applications for this project, clashes started at the border of Armenia and Azerbaijan. And of course, it affected the project negatively. And there was such a climate that even Anadolu Kültür was criticized, targeted. I mean, we have been active in this field for, I mean, almost 15 years, and we thought we did a lot to contribute to dialogue and peace. But within such an environment, even Anadolu Kültür was criticized. For example, there was this, the director of National History Institute at Armenia gave an interview during a symposium about the Treaty of Sevres and specifically called the artists not to apply to the project coming from Turkey. I mean, even Anadolu Kültür, I mean, come on, Osman Bey is in prison also because of the activities he did for reconciliation. So I felt really upset about this attitude. But on the other hand, I mean, it's something that you might expect. And then actually, but of course, this development was, I mean, regarding the project was not only affected from the clashes, but also, for example, from the conversion of Hagia Sophia into a mosque. So this also created reactions in the participants. So the reaction against Turkey grew on every level of society in Armenia, as Turkey was directly in the conflict. So, I mean, we had to adapt, and I mean, we discussed it several times, but in the end, we decided not to continue this project. And I mean, this shows when there is an actual clash, it is really hard to bring these people together and work on a project together. And but it's not only the war itself, but the situation of civil society in Turkey is affecting the collaboration, of course, because at the moment, civil society is struggling with many things at the same time in Turkey. And for example, just to give some, statistics, according to the World Justice Project Rule of Law Index 2019, Turkey has the worst scores, especially in the areas of constraints on government powers, fundamental rights, and government influence on criminal system. It ranks 109 out of 126 countries and has the worst score among Eastern European and Central Asian countries. And this is not just statistics. These figures have become the substance of our lives, part and parcel of what we experience and breathe. So within such an environment, it is really hard to, adapt to the existing situation, the clashes, and act accordingly. Another example, actually, in terms of reacting to the war situation, we decided to make a public announcement about the war, saying, as Anadolu Kültür, we want peace and we want these two societies come together and discuss together, and we are very much against the Turkish involvement in the war. And we are very much against this war. And but we prepared actually the announcement. Our former colleague Tamar worked on it, and she prepared a very nice announcement to show solidarity with the Armenians. But then we learned that the second indictment for Osman Kavala was released. And in the indictment, Osman Kavala was accused of being involved in espionage activities by promoting relations with Armenians. So it was saying he was accused to manage activities which trigger social disintegration by supposedly funding divisive projects directed at citizens, particularly those from Kurdish, Armenian, Greek, or Yazidi background. And in quote, it says, with projects directed at our citizens of Armenian background. Osman Kavala constantly kept the events of 1915 on the public agenda, describing them as genocide, and by carrying out lobbying on this matter, he prepares the ground for our Armenian citizens to adopt a negative attitude towards the state of the Republic of Turkey. Through Anadolu Kültür, the suspect organized in memoriam concert in Istanbul in memory of the Armenian intellectuals who were sent to their death in 1915. And with many similar events, he lobbied against Turkey on the international stage by raising allegations concerning the so-called Armenian genocide. So when you read such a statement in an indictment, how can you make a public announcement saying you're against the war and you're in solidarity with your Armenian colleagues and partners? So it is not only the war which made things very difficult for us, but it is the pressure on civil society which is making things very difficult for us.
Just to add a point, if I may, said Levent. A point, if I may, I would like to make a point. Just to support Asena.
Okay.
In our studies in the last decade, we've also observed a decline in the number of civil society organizations and their members in Turkey. If your work is falls into the category of important issues, so-called important issues, you risk facing a different treatment. Therefore, civil society organizations have started to put limits on their work or frame their work in certain limits. And more recently, the pandemic has significantly prevented civil society work. All these combined resulted in a situation where the civil society moved away from its level of activism 10 years ago. This is a major problem in terms of the importance of the rule of law and democracy in civil society activities.
So very challenging time period. So we have a few questions, and as you can see in the chat, it says you may either ask your question by putting it in the chat, which I will then read, or you may raise your hand as you prefer. So we had a question a little while ago. The first question is from Herine Manassian, who asks to all the panelists, Turkey is an authoritarian, more and more country, which perhaps limits civil society activism, while Armenia is quite democratic and civil society is in a better situation. How does this impact track to diplomacy efforts? So I'm happy for any of the panelists to take, any of the questions. And then after this question, Tom DeWall, I'll turn to you for your question, as you were the next person.
Can I?
Whoever would like to go.
Make a comment here. This is a very good question. I think what we need to reflect on is as follows. How can we turn this into an advantage? After the recent elections in Armenia, in particular, the mood, the social mood had changed in a positive direction. We can say that it resulted in a better situation, but we do not know what the next elections have in store. But this trend is likely to continue in Armenia. This is an advantage. Here is how I can describe it. We've seen a movement that is not populist developing in Armenia. We are going through a period where right-wing populism is on the rise, also in Europe. As to how we can use these positive developments in Armenia, one idea that comes to mind is that we can create synergies from that those developments. But the issue of Azerbaijan and the war created an important barrier. We were hopeful, but that created a barrier, and Armenia plunged into its domestic issues. But looking at the future, I see that it's likely that the trend continues to be in the direction of democracy in Armenia, which is an advantage for us.
Okay, thank you. Georg or Asena, would you like to respond to that question?
Unless Asena wants to go forward, I can say something.
Please, Georg, after you.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I would be happy to agree with both the question, the way the question is formulated, and with Mr. Korkut's words, but it's kind of difficult, especially after the previous round of comments, because nothing that I said as well beforehand about the enthusiasm that exists shouldn't give an opinion that everything is fine in Armenia. This country experienced a huge blow, and not only this country, but also the Armenian populated Nagorno-Karabakh. And this blow is both physical as well as psychological, as well as institutional. And indeed, Mr. Korkut was absolutely correct about the rise of right-wing populism in Armenia. It is on the rise right now as we speak. In the street, I hear the rise of right-wing populism. And I wonder how much do we risk on agreeing to participate in this discussion? Do you from your side, given the situation in Turkey, and I from my side? So far, I haven't experienced much of pressure, or some of the partners. Depends on how you define the pressure, because indeed people like somebody already referred to, I think Asena referred to, people who are, we call the nomenclatura intelligentsia, like head of Institute of History of the Academy of Sciences and others, etc. And a huge amount of people who have been affected by the war are, you know, vehemently against any type of peace work, and moreover, any type of an NGO work. They don't even understand the things that we mentioned previously. What is civil society? What is NGOs? What do they do? What is second track? They don't trust any of these, and they don't want any of the Western money spent into Armenia, for instance. And these statements, these points are very much in line with the things that are happening in Russia. And Russia today has a huge influence over Armenia. So while I am sure that if one is very kind of, you know, meticulous and very professional in arranging their work, it will be most likely possible to continue on. But we shouldn't take these possible threats for the future lightly, especially in the situation where the entire Armenian society is traumatized. They may recognize it or they may not recognize it, but we all carry a very deep trauma from the recent war. And I am going to describe to you with one line what is this trauma about, but it is about several thousands of mainly young boys, 18 years old boys, being torn apart by drones. This is an image that is in front of my eyes, and it's going to be in front of my eyes until the end of my life. And it's in front of the eyes of a huge amount of the Armenian population. So let's understand the situation with all of its difficult aspects. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gevorg. Asena, would you like to comment?
Yeah, actually, I mean, yeah, Turkey is authoritarian and becoming more and more, but Armenia is not without its problems. I mean, I remember the time after the revolution, it was a very, positive atmosphere. People were very hopeful, and Pashinyan was in power. And I remember people whom we directly know, like those who used the Armenia-Turkey travel grant, or the curators that employed institutions. There was an atmosphere where, people like us would directly be in public institutions and change the structure. But many of them were upset and then left these jobs. And it wasn't as, positive as it before. So all these are also affecting our relations. But war put really, serious ball on the war affected much more than anything else, of course. And even at one point, I felt like, are we going back 20 years before the times that Osman Bey was trying to discover what has been in Armenia and how can we have, collaboration with Armenia? Are we going back to those years? What happened to all those efforts and the projects that we realized and all those, the works that try to bring these two societies together? But then I told to myself that I shouldn't be that pessimistic. These efforts will not be deleted. These efforts will not be forgotten. I'm sure they contributed to reconciliation, but actual clash is, was a serious problem, and it really affected our relations and the way we look at each other, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we have a question from Tom de Bol.
Thank you, Amina, and it's very good to see everybody here and to listen in on this discussion. Obviously, I'm listening very closely. Obviously, it's important that dialogue continues, that dialogue restarts, I guess would be the better way of putting it. My question really is, on what topic? I recently rather naively suggested that after President Biden's recognition of the Armenian genocide, there could be more discussion among historians about other episodes in the history of the First World War. I've never had such a violent reaction as I've had from Armenians to that suggestion. It was extreme, and it's ongoing. Extremely, the idea that we can talk about anything else but the Armenian genocide in that era seems to be a very strong feeling amongst Armenians. Again, it maybe speaks to the psychological state of many Armenians at the moment. Asena mentions the cultural heritage work that Osman Bey did. I was also part of a few meetings and a few discussions, for example, on Ani, incredibly important work. But as we know, Osman Bey is in prison. Is it possible to continue discussions on that work, given the state of Turkey at the moment, or indeed the state of Armenia? So, is there does civil society just need to talk about incredibly technical economic issues? That doesn't seem to be the spirit of civil society. So, my question really is, where do you believe that these dialogue meetings which you can initiate, which can bring in other people and have a multiplying effect? Where do you see that dialogue beginning?
Okay, thank you for that question, Tom. Who would like to take the question first? Or, who?
I do have an idea about that. In fact, dialogue is not something that we have for the sake of dialogue. It's part of efforts. It makes sense only when it's part of an effort. If we are going to develop a dialogue, we should first and foremost choose a basis for that. In the work that I've been involved so far, I've seen examples of that. They may be simple or more complicated or more sophisticated, but it would be a much more healthy approach to base our dialogue on a basis. And it could be any area that is associated with civil society. For instance, in the Eastern Black Sea, an activity to be conducted by environmentalists, about environmental activists or business people, or young people, or as Asena mentioned, artists. Basing the dialogue on such an activity or such activities would be a sound way. We need to identify such areas and people that we would need to invite. Perhaps basing our dialogue on such activities would make our job easier, but we definitely need a common activity, a shared activity, and a shared basis for dialogue.
Thank you. Okay, Asena?
Yeah, actually, I can, talk about this ANI project. It was a project that Osman Bey was putting too much importance. I mean, he has been working on cultural heritage for a long time, and he was one of the founders of Cultural Heritage Protection Association also. And this project that he started by inviting experts from Armenia, Russia, Turkey, and Norway. So this was actually very much fitting to his ideal that for a universal heritage site like ANI, you need a universal work also, a collaboration among different countries. And he put too much effort also to have ANI in the UNESCO Cultural Heritage Site list. So although he's in prison, he studied on this project together with us because we already started it. And we communicated through the lawyers, and he, sent us notes, we sent him notes. And in the end, that group of experts he brought together realized the project in collaboration with EPF, Norwegian Institute for Cultural Heritage, and Anadolu Kültür. And we could open that exhibition first in Istanbul, then in Ankara, then Yerevan, then Oslo, and in the end, Kars. But when we brought this exhibition to Kars, it was with the support of the municipality there, this HDP municipality, Kurdish, party, pro-Kurdish party municipality. But then the state appointed trustee and took into custody the mayor, luckily, who was released 2 days ago. And the exhibition was, I don't know what happened today. Of course I know, but the new trustee put the exhibition, in a warehouse, and we couldn't keep it longer there. So there are always, many things affecting your work, and you have to always behave strategically. If you are from civil society, you have to calculate your steps and calculate the actors and the possible reactions, and still continue functioning. I guess at the moment, all the civil society institutions are doing this, actually. One of the reports that we have published to look at the civil society had this title, Hide and Seek, and resilience and chess. So all the movements that you do, you have to calculate, and civil society continues despite everything, and we are continuing despite everything, and Osman Bey is still involved in our activities. But of course, I wish he will be with us and we continue together.
Thank you. Thank you. Gevorg, do you want to come in to this discussion?
Probably with two very brief considerations to add to what has been said. One is that economy and economic and trade relations are also a part of the activities that civil society undertakes. And I think this is an important part, and given the current situation, maybe researching that is also something quite important. And the second consideration is that, yes, dialogue and exchanges may be difficult now if the construal is that this is about that civil society is doing something that the state should be doing. But if we look at the dialogue and exchanges as a network of free-minded people who want to have relations and affect their societies as much as they can, and it may be, as Asena was mentioning, the work around the monuments, an international group, and it may be also work which is done inside the societies, not necessarily in a dialogue format. It may be a work which is a larger, taking a larger regional approach. All these ways are still possible. I don't know how much it makes sense to say now, but in the past, several times, I have said to my Turkey-based friends, we need Armenia, bettering the Armenia-Azerbaijani, whatever relations, understanding, at least understand better each other. Why don't you go to Azerbaijan and help us with that? Because this is very much related. And I've always received a refusal. And I can understand that it is very difficult to go to Azerbaijan and do something at the civil society level in a free way. But if Turkey-based civil society wants to contribute to the stabilization of the situation, this is one of the things which is work with Azerbaijan, because there is a huge wave of hatred, which it may sound one-sided because it's coming from an Armenia-based person, but that level of hatred is several times more magnified than the small Armenia kind of the hatred that is being grown in Armenia among these old intelligentsia and these people affected by conflict. So if something can be done in that respect, that will also contribute to the, somehow perhaps, to the stabilization of the situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gevorg. So I now ask Sona to, you have your hand raised if you want to ask your question. We can hear you, but we can't see you. That's okay.
There is an enormous wave of public disappointment towards the projects promoting peace and, let's say, mutual beneficial relationships between Armenia and both Turkey and Azerbaijan after the war in 2020. So how do you think shall the representatives of the civil society deal with this, let's say, issue, taking into consideration the public disappointment and public trauma, as you mentioned, and how can civil society bring this topic into agenda again? So thank you very much for your answer.
Very important, but also very challenging, difficult question. Gevorg, over to you.
I'm sorry I missed the question. I should ask Sona to repeat it. Also, please tell me, if possible, So Nagihan, please repeat, what type of projects did you take into account? What organization do you represent? What is your last name? Do I know you personally or not?
Subgrant project.
How can I not remember you? Of course I do remember you, Sona. Okay.
And in terms of the question is, how do you think civil society can deal with the issues of, taking into account the public trauma and loss of public trust? Is there a way it can bring this question into the public sphere?
Depends on the level, as I said. It is quite, I'm always cautious with bringing stuff in the public sphere without thinking in advance what can be the adverse reaction. And in principle, one of the best principles of operation in this project, as well as in anything else, is do no harm. So the point is, even if we are not concerned for our personal safety and security and attacks from the state or from the right-wing groups or whatever, but the current traumatic situation is such that it may be just not advisable to be very public about these kind of activities. But as I said, the work never stops. It also depends on the type of the logic that you build, because if, for instance, somebody from the international community, Western usually international community, comes and tells us, please, let's have a discussion with Azerbaijanis to live peacefully ever after. This generates an enormous negativism. But if somebody comes with a trusted Armenia-based or, trusted partners and says, we want to address the crisis situation, what shall we do? How can we do it the best possible way? Then there is always a creative kind of, input that people in the society can make. And there is always a lot to do, obviously. So it depends on how do you construe the thing and what do you mean by publicity, how much public you want to go, what are the precautions that you take, how much flexibility you have, and all these things. Thank you.
Very much. So right now I don't see any hands, and I'm not sure I see any questions. And we're actually 4 minutes from the published end time. So what I would like to do is to turn to all of our speakers for one brief 1 minute reflection on what gives you hope for the future. A very, very, very quick thing. What gives you hope? Because we've talked about the challenges, we've talked about the difficulties, but is there something that you see hope in? Asena, why don't I start with you?
Okay, actually, this reminded me again the speech of Osman Bey in the award ceremony of Hrant Dink Award. And in his speech, he said, he talks about the war, and he says, it gives us great pain to see young people who would easily become close friends under different circumstances and in an environment of equality and freedom, killing each other in the southeast, Iraq and Syria. So he says it grieves him. But he says, still, I do not fall into despair. The main source of my optimism derives from young people, artists, intellectuals I got to know during my trips to many different provinces, including Diyarbakir, Batman, Van, Thessaloniki, Beirut, and Yerevan. So he mentions the existence of people who believed in the shared wisdom and conscience of humanity, as Gevorg mentioned, this vicdan in Turkish, the conscience, and they are the ones who will advocate peace and equality. And I share this optimism. Especially looking at the young people. For example, there was this lawsuit against us. Anadolu Kültür is under threat of being shut down, but we made a public announcement about it. And the same week, we had job interviews with young people who were saying, we want to show solidarity with you. We want to work with you. And at the same time, there were demonstrations at Boğaziçi University. So this is what I feel hopeful about. These people, these young people are open, they're much more intellectual than our times of that age, and they are the ones who will work for reconciliation and peace. This is what I'm hopeful about. Maybe I'm not very hopeful in the short term when it comes to Turkey, but I'm hopeful in the long term.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Levent?
Yani hemen aklıma bir diyalogum geldi.
I think of an anecdote with Ruben Shugaryan. With Ruben Shugaryan, we were talking. He participated in our work coming from USA. I told him, well, you must be very tired coming all the way from the US. Are you hopeful? He said, yes, I am hopeful. I asked why. He said, because I believe that things can change in these societies. And I agree with him. Because these societies, they have a network of relations that go very deep. Maybe young generations are not aware or do not see it, but we get used to each other in very short periods of time because we shared the same territory, and this is a very important factor. As Turkish people or Kurdish people living in Turkey, or all of the societies living in Turkey, we need those well-rooted connections, and I believe that young people are capable of that. Yes, they are not very numerous in number, but we have important supports that we can benefit from. Thank you.
Armenia, you are muted.
I know I'm on mute. I was looking for the button. Thank you. And Gevorg, over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I want to understand why do people learn something and what does it mean to learn? Because we see now in the entire world, especially also including our parts of the world and the West, this huge backlash of the, irrational, believing in irrationality, in somehow right-wing opinions, traditionalism, etc., etc. And my question is, how do people learn? The way I understood it, it is that you now, for instance, this event, if somebody wants to learn something from it, they participated in it, and then they turn, when it's over, they turn off the event and they think about it and they draw some points or some schemes or what happened. They recreate what happened in the event. And then maybe the next morning they think about it as well. So if they put enough effort into reflecting on what they presumably learned, it goes in the long-term memory of their mind and in the light, bright memory, bright part of the long-term memory, meaning it becomes something that they possess for a long period of time, like a tool or something, or a concept or whatever they can use. So because we do a lot of this work for many years and we learn all the time, I think at some point in time, all those who have participated in it and have learned something, have reflected on it, will become people who can use the results in their everyday life and change the situation to the better. Maybe that sounds a modest hope, but that's what my hope is about. Thank you.
Thank you to all our panelists for a very fascinating discussion and for sharing your reflections on this last question of what gives you hope. And I think it's important to think in the short term, but also the longer term. Thank you very much for your reflections and your thoughts. I also want to thank everyone in the audience for participating, and to the Hrant Dink Foundation for organizing this important and timely event. the organizers of the event have asked if everyone can fill in an evaluation form. The evaluation form will be posted in the chat. So if you could fill that out, they would be most grateful. So thank you everyone for spending this time together. I know I have learned a lot and you have all given me much to think about. So I will now draw this event to a close, and I want to ask if the organizers want to make any announcement. Colleen?
We'd just like to thank all the speakers and you, Armine, for a wonderful discussion. I believe it has been very helpful, and we hope we will have more opportunities to come together to discuss these very important issues again, especially in these very volatile times. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening, rest of your day. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks for organizing. Bye.